Perfect. I'm going to try to set up the camera so it actually sees
Okay.
everything.
I'm doing this a little bit differently than I normally do. I never liked PowerPoints. And they have a function and purpose, but I remember I've been going to school my entire life. I'm 70 years old almost. And so recently I've had to make PowerPoints, and I was graded on not not the context of the PowerPoint, but how pretty they look and how they meshed from one slide to another slide and such. And I say slide because I'm old. So anyway, I'm trying something different. Thing is, I'm here to talk about ARRL. I have no idea what you want to know, and you may not know what you want to know. So I'm going to try and give a lot of information, questions. I want questions. And I just found out tonight, someone asked, what do these numbers mean? So there are a lot of assumptions that I make, that many of us make. I was licensed in 1966. I was mandatory shop classes for boys, mandatory home ec classes for girls. Girls were not allowed to have athletics, competitive athletics when I went to high school. And so this was in the 7th grade. The electric shop teachers, a 10-week electric shop. I should have had home ec, really, is what I should have had. But the electric shop teacher, Don Ulray, WA6TRX, old retired Navy guy. He was really old. He must have been 40 at the time. Because I was in the 7th grade. He said we had a radio room. We had old tube radios in there. And when I got licensed, I actually built my first transmitter. That was when CW only, well, for 1 year for a novice. And crystal controlled only, 75 watt maximum output. So I went in the radio room. He gave us a sheet of paper and said, this is the Morse code. On Monday or Tuesday, he said, we're having a test Friday. 7th grade, you're in school. The instructor tells you to do something, you do it. But the key thing was, if you went in the radio room, you got an automatic A. And I said, automatic A, I can do that. And you didn't have to get a license. But I fell in love with ham radio, and I got a license. And it's not my life, but it's a big part of my life. Like I came up from Camarillo. It's about a 2.5 hour-ish drive. It's a pleasant place. Yeah. I've lived there since 1981. So before any of you were born. And along the way, something I learned in enjoying working is portable operations. So I stopped off at Montaña de Oro State Park, Morro Bay State Park. I want to make sure I got here on time. I didn't stop anywhere in between. But I activated Park on the Air. So I made 2 Parks on the Air activations. It's fun. And that's what ham radio is supposed to be, is fun. Yes, there's what's supposed to be. And that to me is one of the reasons why I became the section manager. What is a section manager? What is the ARRL? The American Radio Relay League. 100+ years ago, Hiram Percy Maxim said that we need to have some sort of organization so we can relay the messages from one station to another. Because the radios then were spark gaps. So the way to transmit your message was to key the spark gap, and you wound it up. And actually one of the original spark gap transmitters is at ARRL headquarters, which is in Connecticut, Newington, Connecticut. And the W1AW, if you've been on the air and doing volunteers on the air, you're familiar with W1AW stroke, whatever section. And that original Hiram Percy Maxim's spark gap transmitter is there in the W1AW masonry big building.
Do they ever turn it on for special events?
They do. They do. And when I became a section manager, I went back there for training. Indoctrination is what it really was. And they did turn it on while we were there.
Did you use it?
Not everyone got to use it, but they showed us how it worked. And all the interference it caused. So the ARRL, American Radio Relay League, is the United States, right now, the only organization that represents ham radio operators to various organizations, specifically like the Federal Communications Commission, Congress, and international groups. There are roughly 780,000 licensed hams in the FCC database. There are 160,000 members of ARRL. Roughly 25,000 of those members are from other countries. So we don't have a tremendous amount of clout as an organization when you're looking at going to Congress to lobby for various things. And we'll talk about some of those things that we're lobbying about. And unfortunately, there's no way to track people who are no longer with us, people who have died, who were licensed. So the FCC, you know, you're licensed for 10 years. So you
with magic.
Yeah, and so the FCC doesn't know whether you've alive or dead. I'm a life member of ARRL. My grandmother bought me a life membership when I was about 14, 15 years old. So I'm making out. A life membership at the time was somewhere around $180.
Are they doing it now?
They just stopped that. We'll talk about that. And that's one of the things that I'm not happy about with the ARRL, is management and perception and how they do their finances. But anyway, that's another issue that we'll talk about in a little bit. How many of you are active on the radio? You don't raise your hands. But so how many licensed hams who are still alive are active? How many people I see it a lot where someone takes their class, takes a technician class, takes the test, get the license, go down. Baofeng UV5Rs are now $18.75 on Amazon, free shipping. So, and they're simple to program. So they might even buy a radio, but they don't. Chirp software can be a little bit kludgy to use. So they may or may not even program their radio. They may have never operated the radio. There are groups that are religious groups that are prepping for the big disaster. There are groups that are getting licensed, but never use the radio. So how many licensed people are actually using the radio? So those are some of the things that ARRL is looking at, trying to figure out, and how to help people become more active. If you talk, I was at Pacificon recently. If you happen to wander by there, go to we don't have many conferences, which is one of the things I want to talk about. but we don't have many conferences in the area. But they're talking about getting people active and such. Well, how do you get people active? What do you do? And what the current CEO of the ARRL wants new members. He wants, because members mean money. And the only way the ARRL gets money is through membership and sale of books and such. So the more members, the more clout they have, and the more money they bring in. Well, so my charge from ARRL headquarters is to get hams, have hams become members of ARRL. I look at things a little bit differently. I want people to become ham radio operators. I want people to get licensed and be active. So how do you get people to be active and show them that it is fun? It was fun.
But challenging to find information. So for me, I'm completely new. I tried to search online. It's a struggle. It's not like not lots of YouTubers out. There's some, but not crazy amount. Compared to any other resources
any other resource, right?
Yeah.
And I was at a club meeting not too long ago, in south of here. The club has been around a long time. They don't support emergency communications in their local town. The county does, and we can talk about ARRL if you want to, and other organizations, but the club in their city did not support it. I was there, just happened to be at the meeting. Two, I call them young people, they were in their 40s. What is a young person? You know, it's what is youth and radio? I consider youth and radio college people. And we don't have to worry about bringing 8-year-olds in. But they had two people came, and they were talking to me before the meeting and said, I want to get involved in emergency communications. That's why I got my license, emergency communications. They walked through the doors, told the president of the club, who ignored them. No one greeted them as they came in through the door. And they said, we want to get involved in communications. The president, I was standing there watching, and said, oh, we're not supporting emergency communications. You have to go someplace else. Literally turned his back. How is that bringing people into ham radio? How is that bringing people into enjoying the hobby, feeling welcome into the hobby? Anything you do. I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. One of the major things we were taught was how to treat the customer. You take it's not done today, but you take the bag, fold it, and then present it to the customer with the logo face. You thank them for coming in. I haven't been to McDonald's a long time, except I went last week. And it was, thank you for, I didn't even thank you for your order, but it was number 27 here, and they walked away. That's not welcoming. And we need to welcome people into the hobby. So my goal is to bring people into the hobby. Many, many years ago, my college background, one of the degrees I have, is in journalism, public relations. And I worked on a campaign from my mentor for the Chiropractic Association and of California. Our goal was to promote chiropractic in general. He got complaints from members of the association that say, well, that's going to support all chiropractors and not people who are members of our association. And he said, yep. And as we promote chiropractic, people in general are going to start using chiropractic services more, and you also will get a benefit. Everyone will get a benefit. And to me, that's what ham radio, we need to do in ham radio, is we need to promote the hobby. And help people realize that it's a technical hobby. It can be. It can be. I mean, look at all the different things you can do in ham radio, from digital television to what I did operating a QRP, a 5-watt CW transmitter, an old transceiver that I built, the Sierra Wilderness, from the parks I worked at today, to learning about repeaters, to operating repeaters with handheld radios, FM radios, to DX, to, and now FT8, and the various, what's the next digital form of communications we're going to come up with. So there's all sorts of things that are there that we need to look at. That in my personal opinion, is ARRL is beginning to learn about. They did something. I don't know if any of you are, but everyone know what QRP is? Any questions about what QRP is? Okay. QRP, there are Q codes. And like QSO is a conversation. QSL means message understood. QRP or QRO is high power. So if you want to operate, well, I used to operate contest stations. Let's call it legal limit, the California kilowatt. That's QRO, high power. QRP is low power. In contests, QRP is limited to 5 watts or less. The QRP Amateur Radio Club International looks at QRP CW at 5 watts and sideband at 10 watts. So that's what QRP means. So I enjoy working low power QRP with simple antennas. I built a Delta loop antenna that I can put up in less than 5 minutes. So I go to a park, put the antenna up, and the Sierra Wilderness, if you've heard of Elecraft, it's a radio manufacturer that's, it's one direction or another from here, but it's near the, it's north of here a little bit. And Wayne Burdick, N6KR, and Eric Schwartz, and I forgot Eric's call sign, but they started the company. Wayne used to work with the NorCal QRP Club, and he built or made a lot of radio designs, and he practiced his current business model at the NorCal QRP Club. He built or designed a radio that ended up being the Sierra Wilderness that was commercial and sold. It's a 5-watt radio, fantastic receiver, very sensitive receiver, and it does an excellent job on the QRP CW, the Morse code. So I worked just in 20 some odd minutes. I made 33 contacts, 5 watts, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Washington, Georgia, Texas, Arizona. It's fun. Yeah, there are ways to make that happen. But so we need to let people know about that. And that to me is what the ARRL should be doing. The ARRL just and Parks on the Air is one of those programs that is becoming huge. And there are a lot of operations. There's utilizing the internet to notify people of the operations and such. So the ARRL just produced a book, Parks on the Air book, and they had guest writers to write the book. Most of the ARRL books are rehashes of magazine articles. They take a magazine article, put them together in a book, and make it an anthology of the magazine articles, and then sell them again. But this book is written specifically for Parks on the Air, POTA. And what the ARRL did was the writers of the book were given a coupon code, so that if you order from ARRL, you can enter that coupon code, which is the writer's call sign, and you get free shipping. one of the big complaints about ARRL books is that the shipping costs are exorbitant. But then postage is high. But for shipping that book is $7.95, just shipping for a $22 book. But anyway, I digress a bit. So that's what my personal challenge is to grow ham radio. And I don't just go to ham radio clubs, I go to Rotary clubs and other groups and such to give talks about ham radio in general. I mentioned ARRL has been around a little more than 100 years. And it started off because the spark gap transmission would only make it, maybe, when it really got efficient, would make it across campus. So you needed to have that message relayed from person to person to person. Maxim said, I understand that. So he created this group, the American Radio Relay League. And that's where it started. It grew into being a representative organization for ham radio in general. Started off with problem with most organizations is that they get big and start, it becomes more about the organization than what their focus is. But anyway, they came up with directors. There are 15 divisions in the ARRL across the country, and each division has a director and a vice director. The director is the governance body. They set the tone and tell the CEO what to do, and then that's what they're supposed to do. Just like any other, was it Board of Regents for State College, or is that the UC system? Anyway, the people who run at the state run the state college. They're not supposed to come down to the college and say, this is the way you should empty your trash can. They should say, this is what we want to do, and they do the big picture. And that's what the directors should be doing. They don't, but they get too involved in things. So there in that section, came about and said, we need someone to represent the ARRL to the membership. And that's where the sections came about. There are 71 sections in the country. The Santa Barbara section, excuse me, covers San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Actually, a relatively small section, but we have quite a few hams in that section. So I report in the hierarchy of the field services system. So my role is not, I don't work as a quote team member with the director, although we should work together. But my role is to make sure the day-to-day operation of ARRL is implemented properly in the field. So if, as an example, somehow the FCC gives the database of licensed hams to the ARRL. So the ARRL, that's where they get their information. It was really bad because one of our members, a friend of mine, wanted to, and he's in his 80s, so he feels he's not always there, and he's not. But he wanted to buy a product at the ARRL website. They didn't recognize his call sign. So I was able to put him in contact with the right person at headquarters, and they found out that there was a mistake made when they transferred the data from the FCC to the ARRL. Whose mistake? Well, personally, I don't care, but we just don't want that to happen again and become common. So that's one of the things I do, the type of thing I do.
Quick question.
Sure.
ARRL?
ARRL, American Radio Relay League. Now, going back to just radio and television in general, by international agreement, like a local television station or radio station, the first letter is K. It's K west of the Mississippi. East of the Mississippi, the radio television stations start with a W. Roughly. Well, when ham radio operators came about, there was no first letter. It just started with a number, or like a 6 FK. To coordinate things, the numbers are assigned by geographic location. So these numbers, like you have a call sign of, probably most of you are like KM6 or KN6 something. That 6 means you're in California. It used to be, if you moved out of California and say you moved to Arizona, you had to change your call sign to a 7 call. And then you moved again, you had to change your call sign to a 0 call. Well, that was happening too much, particularly as people moved a lot. So the FCC changed that rule, and it confuses me because that's what I expect a 6 to be in California. WH6 or KH6 is Hawaii, the H. I just talked to a WH6 in Arizona. So it confuses me a little bit, but I'm learning to understand that we no longer have to change that call sign. And you can, with the vanity call signs, you can choose whatever you want. So like KL7 was always Alaska, WL7, L for Alaska. And I was in the Air Force stationed in the Panama Canal Zone. So the Canal Zone had a call sign of KZ5. And I had a KZ5, it was JS. My wife's name was Suzanne, so JS, John Suzanne. And she didn't appreciate that. She didn't like ham radio. And I'll be sacrilegious. She died a couple years ago. So now I can do whatever I want with them. And I was thinking about that the other day as I bought a new radio, a new Elecraft KH1, little handheld CW radio. It's great to be retired and have a little extra cash. But anyway, so that's what those numbers mean. Because there was a question about. Thank you. The other thing that ARRL is responsible for a lot of those changes, such as no longer having to require the change of the call sign when you move to another call sign area. The couple things that ARRL does, the IARU, International Amateur Radio Union. If you're familiar with them at all, it's a international group that oversees amateur radio issues. And they also have a contest. So if you were involved in the IARU contest, that might have been something that you did. So ARRL is the United States representative to the IARU. And actually the president of the ARRL is the secretary of the IARU. And then also there's if you've heard of WARC bands, WARC, the World Administrative Radio Conference, if I remember right. It's now changed to WRC. But in 1979, the WARC, with ARRL being the United States representative to that, a lot for amateur radio, but they oversee and regulate all telecommunications internationally. and they come up with issues and problems and try to solve them or make things worse, whatever. But one of the things that happened was that we ham radio operators received 12, 17, and 30 meters from that conference in 1979. And if you're aware, 12 and 17 meters, you can use any mode. 30 meters, you can use digital modes and CW, but not voice. And digital was added recently to say it's okay, just no voice. One of the things there, if you remember, I think before any of you were born, used to have a Morse code requirement for the test. In 1979, we were just talking about doing away with Morse code. So the 30-meter band was sort of a bone thrown to those people who wanted just wanted to keep Morse code. So they said, okay, here's an amateur band that we can only do Morse code on. We did away with Morse code requirement, which I think was, as it turned out today, I think it was wise. I also think we should do away with incentive licensing as we have it, a personal opinion. And be more like some other countries where you have two classes of license, entry level and the real license. And the entry level is everything that the full license can do, except usually lower power, usually 10 watts. And then the full license can have it. Well, we did away with Morse code, and there was a thought that amateur radio was just going to go in the toilet, basically. It was going to be no longer a real thing. And so Morse code today is more popular than it was when I was learning ham radio. So I mean, it's a very popular thing to do. There are programs where you can online, you can learn Morse code and such. If you've heard about anything about the American Radio Relay League, there's a controversy that's going to continue going on for a while because the dues increase. We went from $49 a year to $59 a year. Plus, print published magazines and newspapers and such are expensive, and the advertising isn't there to support it. So the ARRL board of directors also decided to do away with having QST, which there are some samples over there. Feel free to take them if you want them. But doing away with QST or any of the 4 magazines that ARRL publishes, to have it as part of your membership. One of the things that your membership provides is you get 4 magazines. They're digital, but you get 4 magazines. On the Air, which is a newcomers magazine, entry-level magazine is supposed to be. I think it's an excellent magazine. I learned a lot by reading it. Then you have the National Contest Journal, which was taken over by ARRL 20 some odd years ago. And it's about contesting. Then you have QEX, which is a technical journal. And then QST, which is the general, actually the member publication that's required to be produced. All those magazines are available online digitally as for members. The dues increase. Some people are going to say that the ARRL is going to implode because of the dues increase and the lack of the magazine. The magazine is still being published and mailed to everyone through the end of December. So January 1st, they will no longer get the magazine in the mail. unless you were a life member and opted to keep it. Someone asked about life members and still going on. Membership right now is just a family membership or a individual membership. The assumption is that, well, what's supposed to happen with a life membership is that you take that money, put it into some form of investment fund, and the money earned off that investment is supposed to pay for the membership. It depends. It all depends upon how the stock market does. So if you want to say that life members are not paying their way, you could say that when the stock market's down and we've lost money, or you could wait until the stock market comes back again, which it so far always has, and say, yeah, we are making money. Membership dues is $59, and that life membership fund was earning about $38 per member. So they're saying it doesn't pay for itself, so we can't have life membership anymore. So right now there are no life memberships available.
Do you
Yes.
think once they finally phase out rent to everybody, will life membership become viable again? Or-
Yeah. Yeah, it will. The way they're presenting it, they being headquarters, is that life membership came about in the 60s. And we were having financial issues, so they wanted a rapid influx of cash. So they gave this life membership option. And now we no longer, the life membership supposedly doesn't pay for itself. And there's question about that. So anyway, that's where that is coming from. Other things the ARRL does is the representative to the Federal Communications Commission. There's the, if you're familiar, if you're in an engineering program here, you know more about this than I do. The baud rate issue and the transmission of data at various speeds, the rate, the baud rate, transmission rate. On HF, it's been restricted unless there's an emergency, and then ARRL makes a request to increase the transmission rate, and FCC has always approved it. Well, every other country doesn't have that restriction, but the FCC still has that restriction. They came up with a notice of proposed rulemaking to allow that increased baud rate without having to make a request. So comments are being accepted on that, whether they should accept that rulemaking or not. Couple other issues. A lot of things that I never thought would affect me that don't mean anything to me, I'm realizing maybe do. There are roughly 150 repeater sites on Forest Service land across the country. They're free. You get a permit and from the Forest Service, and ham radio operators have been able to put their repeaters on Forest Service property. The Farm Bill regulates that those permits, and in general talk about what the various government agencies need to do to recoup costs and such. So the Farm Bill's rewritten every 5 years. It was written in 2018, and the Farm Bill said we need to, all the government agencies have to recoup their costs. The FCC decided they're going to recoup their costs by charging us, what is it, $35 for a license.
Yep.
They wanted to make it 50. And when I got my license, my parents made me save up money. I think it was $5 for my license. Then it became free. So it's been free up until a couple of years ago. So what the Forest Service was charged with recouping costs. They met with such resistance that they never sent an invoice out to the users, the ham radio users of the sites. In the current farm bill, ARRL pushed Congress, and it says that ham radio operations will be exempt from charges. I don't think the FCC is going to give back $35, but that's what one of the things that we have done. Antennas. One of the biggest restrictions to ham radio are antennas. There's Julia Brownlee I know her, she's my congressperson. She sees me and says, John, we can talk, but don't mention antennas. The Ventura County has changed from a 55-foot max, and they are presenting a 40-foot max antenna support structure height. When I first moved to Camarillo, there's a 200-foot allowance, which is the FCC max. So if you just go by the FCC, you can have a 200-foot tower. Now it's 55-foot.
Is that like on residential? Or
on residential.
Okay, not on permit.
Right. Well, you had to have a permit, but the permit in Camarillo was give us $5 and go build it.
But now, if you wanted to go above that, was there a process to get exemption?
There's a process for exemptions. Every place has the process for exemptions. Whether you're going to get approved or not is different. And then the cost of the permit can be exorbitant. The specific view is for HOAs and CCNRs. There is a current congressional bill that exempts ham radio antennas from HOA and CCNRs. I doubt that will pass. It's not a popular thing when you're a congressman trying to get reelected, and you have the HOA associations that represent HOAs, and the HOA tells them we don't want antennas, and they have a lot more clout than we do.
Yeah.
So, well, but you have to look at, I have CCNRs where I live. They haven't been enforced for 30 years. They don't exist anymore. So that's where I went down to the building department the other day, and I have a 55-foot tower permit approval for my house. I'm not going to put a 55-foot tower up, maybe 30-foot, put a hex beam on top. And then a vertical for 40 and 80, or maybe a couple of dipoles. But those are the things that you look at. I have some goodies over there. I have more of everything there. We run out. Take a look at that as you get your pizza. And that's all I have to talk about. I went on for a while. Any questions? Questions about anything at all?
Seems like Peter has something to say.
The farm bill,
Yes.
if animal radio associated things are gonna be exempt, is that just for the forest? Sort of forest, but it's not for the FTC, it's.
Right,
not like
it's-
there's some free.
No, it's for those specific installations on the forest.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, right, we around.
Radios?